AstronomyCast, episode 309 for Monday, June 3rd, 2013, Creating a Sciency Society. Welcome to AstronomyCast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. My name is Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today, and with me is Dr. Pamela Gay, a professor at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Fraser?
Doing really well. I'm trying to think, do we have anything we need to let people know to do? Just another reminder, although we're still past the CosmoQuest Hangout-a-thon. If you have some time and or money, by all means, let people know about the fact that CosmoQuest is still looking for donations, and go to cosmoquest.org/donate. And I think we've had some people ask, like, what is the difference between donating for CosmoQuest and donating for AstronomyCast?
It's different sets of humans that do somewhat overlap. So when you donate to AstronomyCast, you're paying for Preston to edit the show. You're paying for Nancy Atkinson to prepare our show notes. You're paying for transcription. And you're helping us with all the random things that we need, varying from gear to hard drives to lighting, which I'm clearly not using right now.
Right.
Our attic is still a wreck from the hangout we did over the weekend. Yep. When you donate to CosmoQuest, you're actually paying for us to generate citizen science programs that you can take part in and help us discover our solar system. We have noisy astronomer Nicole Gugliucci on staff full-time. Corey Lehan's our lead developer. Joe Moore is a graduate student who's a developer on the project. We have an educational team that is working. We're running a one-week teacher professional development workshop this week, and donating to CosmoQuest helps our three people who are our educational coordinators go out, and we provide these teachers with things to use in their classroom as well as with content to use in their classroom. So CosmoQuest just takes everything a whole lot further in enabling people to learn and do science more effectively. So
I've got two things to promote. One is we've updated our Phases of the Moon app. Updated our Phases of the Moon app for Universe Today, and we put in really high resolution images into the Phase app, which was what people were complaining about. So now it looks really nice. When you zoom in, it's really high resolution. I'm really happy with that. The second thing is I've been doing a bunch of really short kind of explainer videos on my YouTube channel, which have been getting a lot of great feedback. They're like 3 minutes long, and we cover one topic, but and that's over on Universe Today's YouTube channel, which I think you may enjoy. So if you
and if we're just going to keep promoting things,
well, I think we're out of time. We're out of time.
I have one more thing to add. 365 Days of Astronomy is still going, and we introduced two recent series: Space Scoops, which is designed for children, and Weekly Space Stories. I am narrating both of those under my narration name, which is Pamela Gay. Just for professional reasons, I keep the two separate. So please go check those out. Enjoy your fiction, enjoy your space stories for kids. Yeah.
People always say that you should do voice narration for things.
And I took them up on it.
Awesome. Okay, great. Well, let's get rocking. So here we go. Our modern society depends on science. It impacts the way we eat, work, communicate, and play. And yet most people take our amazing scientific advancement for granted, and some are even hostile to it. What can we do to spread the love of science through our education, outreach, and media? So this is just nonstop baffling to me, because I think, and for you as well, because we're both super geeks, super nerds, whatever. Both, I know there's some like distinction between what is a geek and what's a nerd. Whatever, I'm both. And we have always been interested in science and technology, and deeply appreciated the impact and role that this plays in our lives. And I know we're preaching to the choir here with the people who listen to the show and watch what we do and come to our star parties every Sunday night. I think someone said, "This is the geekiest thing I've ever seen," and I love it. So, so that is, we are. I think I'm hoping, watching this really as well, understand just how much, how much all of this means to us and how much we appreciate it. But the vast majority of society doesn't
get it.
Does
not get it.
And yet they depend on it. They've got these magical phones that then it's not magic,
Yeah.
it's science that do all these amazing things.
GPS that requires relativity and physics and aerospace
Lasers.
engineering. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet people just take this stuff all for granted. And in
Hmm.
and the worst cases, I mean, those of us in the skeptical movement really have to deal with this hostility towards science.
Yeah. Yeah, this notion that if I can't instantly understand something, and instantly understand its application, it must be wrong, bad, dangerous, evil,
I don't
or
like
simply
it.
not worthwhile. I mean, that's one thing I run into a lot is well, why should we fund what you do? You're just an astronomer. You're not giving back to society. And it wears on you after a while. It makes me think that my life would be more appreciated as a voice actress, and
Right.
it depresses me to no end that the going rate for an average voice actress is 10 times the going rate for an astronomer.
And yet, there are hundreds of people who attempt to get every single astronomy position.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
So it's, there's a lot of people chasing, not a lot of jobs. So I guess what would a sciencey society, and this is me inventing words again, what would that look like, do you think? If we
I
could,
mean, at the most simplistic level, imagine if every science fiction television show or other form of speculative fiction show had a science advisor who was listened to with the same respect that Kevin Grazier eventually found himself being listened to on Battlestar Galactica. Imagine a society where people thought that it was cool and normal to problem solve how to fix something rather than just buying a new one. It's that combination of having the respect to go out and find the person who has the know-how and ask, and that desire to figure things out on your own, like the Maker Society. If we could combine that respect for intellect and that respect and desire to be part of making things, I think that's what it would look like. We're
yeah,
not there, though.
yeah, and we're really, really fortunate in the kind of science-based community that we have. We're
Yeah,
really found on Google Plus and on Twitter and Science Online and these groups. There's a lot of women that are actively engaged. I mean, when we see the weekly
yeah.
space hangout, it's you and Amy Shearer Tidal and Nicole and Emily Lakdawala, and there's just so many really knowledgeable women. But
Yeah.
that's fairly rare when you look at the bigger numbers.
It's actually a very odd selection effect. One of the things that you find is that by and large, more people who go into the sciences, or the physical sciences at least, and the engineering sciences are men. Of those who do, both men and women, make it into the fields, the women are more likely to end up in the education research and the communication paths.
Mm.
So what you're seeing is in the sciences, yeah, you've got lots and lots of men, but you preferentially end up with women in the communications roles.
Now, I've never had anybody really give me a hard time about my love of science and technology. Even growing up, I was always encouraged. I went to engineering at UBC. I went to computer, I got my computer science degree. But
Yeah,
for you,
yeah.
what was it like growing up as a woman who was that interested in science? Did you find that this anti kind of sciencey society was working against you?
Well, it's not even just the anti-sciencey, but also the anti-intellectual. You get tired of being smart being a curse, and you can't excel in science and try and hide your intelligence at the same time. So you're fighting the fact of, oh crud, I'm getting made fun of because I like science, and the oh crud, I'm getting made fun of because I'm smart. And then you're also facing all the gender bias from the physics teacher who gave me a C because he wanted to teach me a lesson about how women don't belong in science, and it was better to learn young than to waste my life trying to be a scientist. And I wish this was a joke, but it's true. This is what happened to me my senior year of high school. Um, it's it's never ending from the you don't look like a scientist shock with a bit of appallment when
Yeah.
someone finds out, to it gets to the point that you either go into a situation ready to like apologetically admit that you're a scientist, or ready to own it with the type of self-confidence that gets taken as you're scary. um, it's hard. It's really just hard.
And did you find that, growing up for you, that kind of backlash or that sort of, anti-intellectualism, I mean, do those go hand in hand, do you think? Do you think that sort of intellectualism and interest in science go hand in hand?
Um, I think of the people who eventually fight to make it in science, you have to also, at a certain level, at most levels, be an intellectual. The pare down project process for science is huge. In physics astronomy, I know in my personal classes, I went from 70 people in the first astronomy class I took. Most of them weren't majors, but that's where the majors were. Next semester, there was 12 of us. Of the 12, 5 of us graduated. Of the 5 of us who graduated, 3 of us got PhDs. Of the 3 of us who got PhDs, 2 of us are still in the field. I then went to Texas for graduate school. Um, of the 18 of us that started at Texas, 3 of us got PhDs. That's a huge pare down. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then
And
you look at how many stay in the field after that. It's just this constant loss of people, just because there's not jobs, there's not positions, and it is such a long, hard fight.
and then we look at, like, what's on popular television,
Yeah.
and you get, and I don't want to make this a rant about, the sort of how bad society has gotten to and kids these days and so on,
Mhm.
because, but I mean, you get Jersey Shore and you get all these terrible reality shows, and
Yeah,
and
and it doesn't have to be that way. It's possible to have positive thought processes. It's rare, but it's possible in these reality shows. One of my guilty pleasures is I watch on Hulu this sci-fi channel reality show called Face Off, which is about doing special effects makeup, and they're forever that you can't do because that's not anatomically correct. And so you have people looking through anatomy books and looking through what exists in the natural world, seeking inspiration, and they're getting downgraded for not having things that are physically realistic.
And so we also see situations like, I mean, look at the Mythbusters, obviously, which is a
Yes.
huge success and,
Yeah.
immensely popular with people. And I think, that really crosses lines. I mean, and maybe, I mean, you get the situation where these people are blowing things up and testing out things that are gross and weird and stuff like that. But, if you peel that part of it back, there's a really good science lesson going on there about testing, about putting in controls, about,
Yeah.
how science really works, and people can really watch it unfold in front of them.
And one of the other things that's kind of awesome is the shows that are either speculative fiction or science fiction that incorporate science the most realistically are often, not always, but they're often the more successful. People are forever panning Armageddon because it had really bad science. Now, Deep Impact had its science somewhat better and gets ignored because it just wasn't a great movie. But then you look at the modern wave of post-Armageddon shows that are on television right now. There's Revolution, Defiance, Falling Skies, and Revolution has about the worst science of it, and it's also one of the least critically acclaimed of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's that scientific realism that you have in Falling Skies and Defiance that really adds something to the shows.
Now, is it just sort of Western culture that has a problem with this? I mean, Canada and these states are very similar in the situation, and I'm assuming, England, places like that are very similar.
They have it
Australia.
to a lesser degree
But
in
if you're in Korea or Japan,
oh,
they take
totally.
science fairly seriously, right? In
They take it
China.
very, especially in China, where they see it, and in fact, in much of the developing world, they see their intellectual students as the people who have the chance to will better their society, to better their own lives. The phrase "tiger mom" is largely derogatory here in America, and it refers to the way Asian parents work so hard to see their children succeed. And it bothers me at a certain level that um, parents that fight too hard to see their children succeed, it's something that's that harshly looked down upon. And yes, you can go way overboard in helping your child succeed. I've seen
Sure.
that.
Right, but the point being that, if a person is good in science in
Yes,
Korea or Japan or in China,
they're
that's not
praised, they're
that,
celebrated.
yeah, that's not seen as a bad thing. That's not seen as a
Mhm.
weird thing. And do you think maybe that's almost like you get this situation where the science has made such a difference and it's so ingrained into the culture that you take it for granted. And now suddenly you don't need to, you're not directly connected to the value that you're getting from the science.
I'm not sure where it is. One of the things that I want to find a sociologist to talk to this about is you see in countries like Finland where education is highly regarded, school teachers are highly paid, about the same as they pay their doctors. Here in the United States, that's not true. I've heard Brittany Schmidt, who's an amazing researcher. She's the one that figured out how hydraulics plays a role in the ice motion on Europa. Brilliant woman. And I heard her talking about how here she is in her early 30s, so proud to finally be living in an apartment without roommates while she's watching her friends from high school buy houses. And the reason that she's just now finally able to have an apartment without a roommate is because scientists are so poorly paid by and large in the academics. That's not true in industry, but in academics it is.
Hmm.
So when you have postdoctoral positions, which is what most of us have for 12 years, I escaped that, but most do, that often pay $40,000, and you have starting faculty positions in some universities that pay $30,000. Um, that says something about how society values science.
Now, do you think that the tide is shifting a little bit? I mean, I see things like, back 20 years ago or whatever, there was no good reason to be into video games and comic books and science and all these kinds of computers, in that, the way you were seen, like there was no, for a lot of the mass majority of the bullies, etc., there was no
Yeah.
no social value to be into those kinds of things, like role-playing games. I organized role-playing game clubs in my various school
Oh, I
classes and
D and
stuff.
D.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
did D&D Basic back in the day.
So, there was, socially that was seen as really kind of weird. But now everybody plays video games. Everybody has a computer. Everybody uses a smartphone. There's that's considered normal. And if you're in, and everybody goes and watches the big.
But there's still those delineations where not everyone does World of Warcraft. That's the new D&D.
Mhm.
Not everyone does D&D still. So I think the social games are still skewed, whereas Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, all those things when we were children, everyone played those. Everyone had an Atari, it seemed like. It was the multi-user games that were always skewed. Um, and so it's that weird, it's okay for a jock to be totally into playing the arcade style games, but not totally okay to play the World of Warcraft style games.
Now, if I could grant you unlimited political power
Hmm.
to kind of affect policy in the United States,
Yes.
um, and Canada, why not? Go ahead. You can lead us.
Okay.
What would you do, to kind of encourage an interest in science and to help? I mean, I think, one of these big risks, and I think this
Yeah.
existential risk that a lot of people are worried about in the United States is the situation where the United States falls behind in terms of science to the rest of the world. What would you
Yeah.
do if you could sort of, if you had a few $1 billion that you could affect policy, you could, make changes? What would you do?
Few billion.
A
So
few
at
100 billion? I mean, whatever you want,
okay.
whatever,
So
whatever.
so
I am
it,
opening up the coffers. The U.S. as a Canadian, I'm opening up the U.S. coffers to your disposal. What will you do to try and encourage and help, make science more of a priority in U.S. society?
at the couple billion level, I think what we really need is a society that is better able to understand how cool and awesome science can be. And one of the best ways to do that, I hate saying this, it's through robotics, is you get kids learning how to program, how to build, both on the software and hardware side, robotics to solve various problems. You get adults free makerspace. If we had maker centers in every town and free courses that people could engage in, so that they could celebrate their own technical solutions, low-cost 3D printers, introduce people to the power that comes from knowing how to do problem solving. And then on the other side of this, free up R&D budgets so that there's more money for innovation, there's more money to discover, both on the basic research side and then the applied research side. We don't have significant money being spent on R&D right now, and that's frankly terrifying. So it's this twofold: you have to engage people in the process. It's not enough to simply teach facts, teach figures. You need them doing science, and I think that the best, most effective way is often through robotics, and robotics can get tied in with astronomy and aerospace. There are programs to build artificial intelligence suborbital gliders. There is the Moonbots program with the Google Lunar X Prize to build robots that have capacities to rove over moon-like surfaces. And then maker spaces, if we can get, imagine if the way post-World War II, admittedly mostly sons worked with their fathers on the car and on the fixing the television and everything else. That was such a powerful experience, both for the family and for learning. Imagine if it became maker spaces where moms and dads took their sons and daughters to build things for fun instead of sitting around watching movies on the sofa while playing on their smartphones.
You really want a MakerBot, don't you?
I really do.
I can tell. I want one too. It'd be awesome. So this is funny because I think you are always the sort of grim realist, and I am the breathless optimist of this team. And I think that you can't lead a horse, or you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. That you can't push a string. That the tremendous accomplishments made in science and technology in the United States has given your culture so much of a head start, an advantage in the sort of the world economy, that it's only natural for people to be taking it for granted at this point that they're coasting, in many cases. And I think that you're having the situation where, how do you compare and contrast where most people kind of turn their nose at science and they don't really care and they don't understand how it works and they aren't contributing to it from their taxes and so on, and then you look at a place like China or Japan or Korea, especially China, where they take it like it's super serious. It's a life or death race to the top.
And I think putting Japan and China in the same boat is a very poor thing to do, because they have completely different motivations.
Yeah.
Japan is a first world nation.
Yeah.
It is technologically far more advanced than we are. Going there, suddenly I realize how little technology has infiltrated my life. China, on the other hand, is a nation that has great extremes across the country. And America has that too, but not to the same level. We do have issues in the Ozarks. We do have issues in the Leeward Island, where there are communities that are really third world, but they're small, and this is a small fraction of our nation. In China, that's turned on its head, where you do have vast areas that are still very much developing, and it's in those areas that they recognize their smart child, they will give up anything, including giving their child to go to state-run schools, in order to see that child be able to join this first world society of the technologically elite. Japan's actually a really interesting example of some place that, because of the smallness of the nation and the need to mechanize things, and also because they have a very inverted population where they do have so many older people. They've had to turn to technology to solve problems, from reading books to children to providing companions for the elderly. And it's a country where robots are an answer.
Right,
I
and
wish
so
we could we could emulate that.
yeah, so I wonder if, it's more going to be a situation where the technology is going to continue advancing and it'll just be more and more disconnected for people, and they won't really understand and they won't be engaged with it. And the people who are will become more and more specialized. You'll become a warp field, coil engineer, right? And
Yeah, I
and
don't
all you
know.
understand are warp field dynamics, like
It's
from the Star Trek universe.
it's interesting how we're ending up in such a cliquey society. You and I live in circles where we consume science focused music. We read books from authors who take time to find PhDs to advise them on their science. We hang out with people who are solving some of the great software problems out there and developing amazing new hardware. We have self selected to live in a subculture, counterculture, I don't know, that is focused on living more facts based, living more science inspired realities. But we are embedded in cultures where that's not uniformly true. I ride horses, and I'm seeing this rift between those of us who choose to live connected lives and those who eschew that as other, eschew that as improper, as not necessary. And I worry that the cultural biases against uh, diving into technology and intellectualism are going to lead, at least in America, to the digital divide between those who are connected and those aren't, growing stronger and stronger, even though the costs to be connected are dropping, and there is now digital access for almost anybody. But
Hmm.
you need to intellectually decide, I'm going to be a connected person and accept that this is a source of information that can allow me to live a better life.
Yeah, and I think, I feel that the changes that are happening now in our society and the changes that are happening in our technology are happening so fast that I'm having trouble keeping on top of it. That
Right.
I'm constantly surprised, and you and I will do this to each other all the time. I'll be like, "Hey, have you seen this thing yet?" And you're like, "No, this is the most useful thing that's ever been presented to me.
Yeah,
This is going to
yeah,
change everything." And then, a week later, you go, "Oh yeah, and by the way, you remember that thing you showed me last week? Now I'm making it do this." And I'm like, and
yeah,
so there's this, and this is people who are constantly on the lookout for it, who are attempting to incorporate it into our lives as quickly as possible.
yeah,
And yet, and still I'm completely overwhelmed by this science and technology. And so I see people
yeah.
who are just disconnected from it, and they are in many cases kind of slipping behind. Now maybe the
Mhm.
onus is then on the technologist to make things more accessible, make things easier for people to use. But then that's very specifically saying, don't worry about the science that's going on here.
Right, and that's not the answer. We need to teach people
Yeah.
the problem-solving skills. I had a rant at one of with not at with one of my staff earlier today, because he and I live on the cutting edge of technology, and we have to figure every bloody thing out for ourselves. And I know you're in the exact same boat. And then we turn around and we have people asking us, "Well, I need you to explain this to me. I need you to do that." And then getting very like we're morally required to explain all of and
Yeah.
huh.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. But the point being that really, you can't expect everybody to kind of dive in as deep as we like to go with this technology and with the science. But
And
there is a certain level. It's funny. I mean, I experience this with my kids, that I'm teaching them to be skeptics and rational thinkers as just like a baseline. And where they go
yeah,
with that doesn't really matter. but I'm teaching them how
And
to.
you didn't say it, but you're teaching them problem solving as well, which is a third step to it.
Yeah, yeah, but like we'll watch an episode. I watched The Man of Steel just yesterday, and we loved it. But there was a ton of product placement in it. It was very subtle, including a product placement for LexCorp, which I thought was awesome. But there's a point where this is not really a spoiler. Someone gets smashed through a 7-Eleven, and my son goes, "Oh, product placement." For 7-Eleven.
Right.
And so, there's this kind of the skepticism and sort of this rational thinking that's going on all the time. And maybe if we could just get people to learn those skills.
Well, I really do think problem solving plays just as much a part of it, because I know you hand you or I a new piece of technology, and we start figuring out on our own how to use it. You or I break something, and we can't always fix it, but we can at least figure out in what direction we broke it. And that ability to look at your reality and see how pieces fit together and see how to problem solve solutions to basic problems, to figure out how to problem solve, how to use a piece of new software, how to ask questions that allow you to figure out how to engage in new situations. That is an additional skill that it comes out of the basic scientific method. You
Yeah.
hypothesize, you test, you figure out if it's right. And that, I think, is just as necessary. Because I mean, imagine all the hours people are going to waste if they wait for someone like you or I to teach them how to use a Google Hangout. Just
Oh yeah.
do it. Just do it.
Just do it until you break it, and then
Yeah.
figure it out. Yeah. No, and again, I've kind of taught my kids 90% of their troubleshooting issues have gone away in our house
Yeah.
now, because it's like, did you restart it? Did you reboot it? Did you retry it? Have you reinstalled
Yeah.
it? And now Google it, because that's all I would
Yeah.
do. Um,
Right. Right.
right? But I think that, so maybe that's it. Maybe that's just the heart of it. And I think, we're starting to run out of time here. So that if we could somehow give future generations time to just really learn and internalize the scientific method,
Yeah.
and to sort of use that to study their lives around
Yeah.
them, that would become this tool set that they could then use for the rest of their life, that everything they see they could bring into the sort of filter of the scientific method.
Right. Just learn, understand, and imagine how different television would be if you got to watch people trying to figure out how to solve their problems instead of always waiting for people to solve their problems.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this is great. Thank you very much, Pamela.
It's been my pleasure. Okay.
Stop, save. And speaking of kids, now I have to repay the Reaper, so I will be taking them for ice cream.
Oh, it's only 8:50 there.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Okay.
and I will export.
Yep.
And then I will. All right, we're safe. We are safe, but for how long? Okay, so let's see. Let me see. Go through here a bit. Get some questions. Randy8118 says, "Without science, we'd be living in the Middle Ages." Exactly. James Haney says, "People will die for their Xbox, but will pillory against a super collider." That is absolutely true. James Haney also says that we'll be in the second dark age if some have their way. We have to fight the almost involuntary ignorance of modern society. That's his thing. That is it. It is this voluntary ignorance, which is enraging.
It's the anti-intellectualism.
Yeah, yeah. You're like, I don't. Not only do I don't need to know how this stuff works. You're a bad person if you want to know how this stuff works. Now give me the next smartphone.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah, yeah.
It's to the fact that I'm the smart girl in the room shouldn't be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Randy818 is also saying that in China and India, the STEM fields are seen as the ticket out of poverty, which I think is what
Yeah.
you really hatched
Yeah.
on. And I think that, that comes back to the conversation we're having, that, where I'm this sort of pessimist is that it almost feels like China needs to start like if the next really successful smartphone is invented in China, not just built in China, but actually, innovated in China, and we're all buying the Chinese version, the whatever is the next great technological leap, and it is Chinese made in the way that we buy the Japanese made. I think that may help encourage, although I guess it, maybe didn't really when the Japanese made that leap forward past the United States in terms of a lot of science and technology. So, yeah. All right. Dan Bice says, thanks for the double feature. I guess in July while you're gone, I'll have to go outside to play. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So just to kind of give people that warning, we're going to be gone for a goodly chunk of July. So
yeah, I'm traveling July 7 to August 7, and while I may be able to do some recording while I'm gone, I think we're just going to work our butts off
beforehand. Yeah, and put a bunch of shows in the stream. So
yeah.
The great goal, I mean, we've caught up, and big thanks to Courtney Hogan for helping to kind of wrangle us and figure out our schedules and stuff.
And we unfortunately, Preston went on vacation, so he's now getting tortured with the backlog we created of audio.
Yeah, but the goal, the goal really is for it to be, we record on Mondays, the YouTube gets put into the YouTube feed, the audio gets put into the audio feed, it all happens within a day, the way you expect, and that we understand that that's the goal, and we're going to try and get to that point that we're both doing video and we've got audio coming out at the right time. And
I suspect the audio will always lag by 1 week.
Maybe I don't know if it has to lag by a week. But anyway,
Kristen has a full-time job, and we can't afford a full-time audio editor. So.
That's true. Maybe it will lag a week. Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, I think I'm going to go buy some ice cream now.
Okay.
Michael Jobin asks, will the first robotic program be affected by sequester? Do you know what that is? The first robotic? It's the capital.
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah, it will be.
Yeah. If it's anything, it will be affected by the sequester, right?
So it's actually not sequestration that will affect it. What's going to affect it is if the president's budget is passed. There is a bill circulating in Congress that would mandate that what the president's budget wants to do won't be allowed. So there's an interesting and long, protracted battle ahead. What's at issue is the new funding calls for programs are being put on hold while Congress and the president battle over a budget. So programs that are up for renewal, the funding for that renewal doesn't exist.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions we've got, all the comments we've got. So thanks again, Pamela. I will see you later. Thanks, everyone, for watching. The next thing is going to be have you got anything on Wednesday, Learning Space?
Yes. There will be a learning space at 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, midnight London on Wednesday.
Okay, cool. And then we'll be doing, there's going to be a weekly space hangout on Friday, hosted by Amy Sher Title. So
that sounds great.
Yeah, she's going to do a great job. And then I will be back. I'm going to be missing the virtual star party on Sunday, and then I'll be back next week. So we'll talk then.
Sounds great. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Pamela. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you all next time.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
So I've got two things to promote. One is we've updated our Phases of the Moon app. Updated our Phases of the Moon app for Universe Today, and we put in really high resolution images into the Phase app, which was what people were complaining about. So now it looks really nice. When you zoom in, it's really high resolution. I'm really happy with that. The second thing is I've been doing a bunch of really short kind of explainer videos on my YouTube channel, which have been getting a lot of great feedback. They're like 3 minutes long, and we cover one topic. But and that's over on Universe Today's YouTube channel, which I think you may enjoy. So if you
and if we're just going to keep promoting things,
well, I think we're out of time. We're out of time.
I have one more thing to add. 365 Days of Astronomy is still going, and we introduced 2 recent series: Space Scoops, which is designed for children, and Weekly Space Stories. I am narrating both of those under my narration name, which is Pamela Gay. Just for professional reasons, I keep the 2 separate. So please go check those out. Enjoy your fiction, enjoy your space stories for kids. Yeah, it's
People
all
always
good.
say that you should do
And you're helping us with all the random things that we
the
need,
gear,
varying from gear to hard drives to lighting, which I'm
hosting,
clearly not using right now.
right?
Our attic is still a wreck from the hangout we did over the
Yep.
weekend. When you donate to CosmoQuest, you're actually paying for us to generate citizen science programs that you can take part in and help us discover our solar system. We have noisy astronomer Nicole Gugliucci on staff full time. Corey Lehan's our lead developer. Joe Moore is a graduate student who's a developer on the project. We have an educational team that is working. We're running a 1-week teacher professional development workshop this week, and donating to CosmoQuest helps our 3 people who are our educational coordinators go out, and we provide these teachers with things to use in their classroom as well as with content to use in their classroom. So CosmoQuest just takes everything a whole lot further in enabling people to learn and do science more effectively.
Voice narration for things. So you
And I took them up on it.
awesome. Okay, great. Well, let's get rocking. So here we go. Our modern society depends on science. It impacts the way we eat, work, communicate, and play. And yet most people take our amazing scientific advancement for granted, and some are even hostile to it. What can we do to spread the love of science through our education, outreach, and media? So this is just nonstop baffling to me, because I think,
Yeah.
and for you as well, because we're both super geeks, super nerds,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Both, I know there's some like distinction between what is a geek and what's a nerd. Whatever, I'm both. And we have always been interested in science and technology and deeply appreciated the impact and role that this plays in our lives. And I know we're preaching to the choir here with the people who
Yeah.
listen to the show and watch what we do and come to our star parties every Sunday night. I think someone said, this is the geekiest thing I've ever seen. And I love it. So, so that is, we are... I think I'm hoping, watching this really as well, understand just how much all of this means to us and how much we
Yeah.
appreciate it. But the vast majority of society
Does
doesn't
not get it.
doesn't get
Does
it,
not get it.
and yet they depend on it. They've got these magical phones that it's not magic,
Yeah.
it's science, that do all these amazing things.
GPS that requires relativity and physics and
Lasers.
aerospace engineering. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet people just take this stuff all for granted. And in the worst cases, those of us in the skeptical movement really have to deal with this hostility towards science.
Yeah. Yeah, this notion that if I can't instantly understand something and instantly understand its application, it must be wrong, bad, dangerous, evil,
I don't
or
like it.
simply not worthwhile. I mean, that's one thing I run into a lot is why should we fund what you do?
Astronomy Cast, episode 309 for Monday, June 3rd, 2013, Creating a Sciency Society. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. My name is Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today, and with me is Dr. Pamela Gay, a professor at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Fraser?
Doing really well. I'm trying to think. Do we have anything we need to let people know to do? Just another reminder, although we're still past the CosmoQuest Hangout-a-thon. If you have some time and or money, by all means, let people know about the fact that CosmoQuest is still looking for donations, and go to cosmoquest.org/donate. And I think we've had some people ask, like, what is the difference between donating for CosmoQuest and donating for Astronomy Cast?
It's different sets of humans that do somewhat overlap. So when you donate to Astronomy Cast, you're paying for Preston to edit the show. You're paying for Nancy Atkinson to prepare our show notes. You're paying for transcription.